Coming up on today's edition of Women in Money, the shit we don't talk about, our guest is Matt Friscia. Matt is the owner and manager of Transworld Business Advisors of Grange.
Yeah, I was so excited when I met Matt because I learned a lot about buying and selling businesses from Matt, and Matt's a business broker. So I thought, this is kind of cool. I never met a business broker before.
And then when I dove into his site and I saw all the opportunities available, I was like, wow, how come I did not know about these? And we have to share this with our communities of women, as we know so many of them want to be business owners or are business owners themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the stat is over 1,800 women open a new business every day in the United States, which is so exciting. They can't do the 9 to 5 when they're trying to manage families and children and, ailing parents or whatever. And women are really super cool, great business owners. So we just wanted to dive into this conversation and get some tips from Matt about what all of this entails.
So remember to like and subscribe, as it helps us grow, and share it with a friend, as we have to keep talking about this shit. Now let's get started.
Gloria Steinem once said, "We will never solve the feminization of power until we solve the masculinity of wealth." Barbara Provost and Maggie Nielsen are the team at Purse Strings that will help you navigate the ins and outs of financial independence so that you can be financially fearless. This is Women in Money, the shit we don't talk about.
Hey, Matt, we're so excited to have you with us today and to learn about buying and selling businesses. But before we get in, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So I am a business broker. I was in corporate America for 15 years and was always in a sales role, and kind of got sick of seeing my kids for only 30 minutes a day. And then I said, well, maybe get the entrepreneurial bug. Even though I had some great times in corporate America, I just was logistically wanted to do some more things. And I bought my first business. That was a franchise. It was in senior care, and I did that with my mom as well, by the way. She's a nurse. Yeah. And we, first year and a half, made every mistake in the book possible. I was trying to do it absentee. I was trying to keep my corporate job. I was trying to do two things. And then only when I jumped in full time did things really start to happen. And then in that process, we bought a business within a business. So we had a territory. We bought a third territory that had billing and clients and caregivers and all that fun stuff. And then that sort of really skyrocketed our growth to springboard to really grow that business within 5 years, and then successfully sold it just because it was great business. We could have kept, growing it and growing it. Healthcare is it's not for the weak. It's pretty intense. Yeah. It's a very 24/7 business. But I checked the box of business ownership, and I was like, okay, I'm not going back to corporate America. I'm never doing that. But maybe this business per se isn't what I would want to do for the rest of my life. But I had a good experience in running a business and growing a business. So then I actually engaged a Transworld Business Advisor to sell my business. That took about 18 months from start to finish. And upon selling my business and leading up to selling my business, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. First of all, you pay that broker commission and you're like, wow, that's a decent amount of money to pay somebody. And then I was also kind of like, all right, this is B2B, this is business to business, this is sales. So in that regard, I was like, okay, I think that's what I want to do. And I haven't looked back since, and have grown our office pretty significantly with 8 people now. And you saw we have over 30, 40 listings at any given time. And it's been a positive experience. So that's probably a pretty long introduction, but that's where I'm at and how I got here.
Well, it's a great story and shows great experience that you have, using Transamerica, selling the business, buying your own business, running a business. So you have all that experience, so you could really speak from. So we're so glad to have you as one of our Purse Strings approved professionals. And so we want to kind of dive in more. And so just to get started, can we define what a business broker is for those who are kind of unsure there?
Think about a realtor, but for businesses, right? So realtors sell real estate. Business brokers sell businesses. It's not too far apart, but I will say the process is a lot different, and it's a little bit more involved. Real estate's pretty cut and dry, right? You can buy something, you can see the comps in your neighborhood, you can there's pricing that you kind of know, and there's 6 billion realtors, right? I always say that it feels like there's like four business brokers. There's a much smaller amount, and hopefully over time, to be honest, because we do a lot of education on because a lot of people say exactly what you say. I don't even know what a business broker is. I didn't know you existed, right? So we talk to a lot of people that say, I'm 60, I'm 70. You don't have to be in that age range, but I have this great business. My kids don't want my business. I don't know what to do. I was going to shut it down, so I didn't even know I could potentially get value for my business. So we do the typical buying and selling of businesses. Now, us, for our brokerage specifically, we do a lot of what's called Main Street USA businesses. So businesses under $10 million, under $5 million. And we kind of super serve the underserved, right? Because, I can have a bleeding heart for small businesses, having run one and sold one. But that's kind of what makes the world go round, is all these small businesses that are out there. Now, there's truly business brokerages that are mergers and acquisitions. It's all called mergers and acquisitions, but businesses that have $1 million or more of cash flow, or EBITDA as we call it, or seller discretionary earnings. And that's not much different, but it involves more attorneys, involves more, it's a different type of transaction. We're also agnostic, so we don't specifically just do healthcare, or just do home services, or just do manufacturing. So, we kind of like that. We're pretty agnostic in regards to who we work with. And then on top of that, there are some other things that we specifically at Transworld do that a typical business broker does not do. If you needed a valuation just to know how much your business is worth, we can do those. If you have a unique business that maybe you can franchise that concept, we can help you with that as well. Or similar to what I did initially, is I don't know what I didn't know, and this person that I met at a franchise expo, and again, I have to clarify, you do not need to be a franchise to work with us at all. I just say this because I've had a lot of experience on the franchise side of things. I know he kind of gave me this book, and he was like, I don't read this thing, and if you're interested in entrepreneurship and owning a business, get back to me. And I was like, okay. And then he was like showing me some concepts of franchise concepts. And I was like, well, how do you get paid exactly during this? And he said, well, if you do decide to go with one of these, I get a commission, if you're tied to a franchise that you buy. So that's called franchise consultancy. We do an itty bitty amount of that. Like if you don't like anything that's existing, which I always encourage people to buy into a business that has cash flow, then of course you can certainly always buy a new territory to do a franchise if you want. Maybe something's not available in some territory, or a specific vertical of business that somebody wants to do.
Interesting. So you mentioned some of the businesses that you work with, and can we go a little bit deeper on how you define? Do you consider them small businesses that you work with? Is that your definition? And if so, what is the definition of a small business in your eyes?
Yeah, so we definitely consider them small businesses, and I would say, just to give an example, it's the dry cleaner down the street all the way up to the multi-million-dollar business that potentially private equity would be interested in buying, because they're buying all these same types of businesses across the country, and they have a large fund, and they've kind of established themselves in a specific vertical that's appropriate to them, or that they've kind of focused on.
Got it. So can you give us some examples? Like you said, the dry cleaners, would it be like a restaurant, a nail salon? Are there any that you don't do?
Yeah, so it's a great question. There's really not many that we don't do. I think a lot of it has to do with what your financials look like, your books, or what the opportunity is exactly, right? Because a lot of people say, well, have you ever sold this? Maybe, maybe not, but that's really not what we're focusing on as much here. People are looking to buy into cash flow. They're looking to buy into a specific type of business. So, for instance, yesterday I talked to somebody who had a yoga franchise that, they're giving it all they can, right? The wife's the one that's the main person running it. The husband has a day job, and is trying to kind of keep this all together, and they haven't had huge success with it, right? They're making a little bit of money, but they're kind of in that weird 2 to 3 years where they're trying to get it off the ground here. But they've already invested in infrastructure. They have goodwill now, right? They have clients. They have membership right now, but they're not cash flowing that great. So bottom line is that if I was into buying that type of exercise business or fitness business, they did all the hard work. They got it up and going and did all these things. Now, I may not be buying off of a multiple of cash flow for that, but I'm buying assets of that business that I can springboard off of to do great things. And probably I'm getting it for cheaper than what all the time and effort that they put into it, unfortunately for that particular couple, right? But so those are some things that we would it's a pure asset sale. You're just buying the assets. You're not buying into the cash flow per se. That's kind of, I don't want to say it's a distressed business, but that could fall into that category. Now, to what you're asking about, last year we did 16 deals. So of those deals, there were home service businesses, so plumbing businesses. There were med spa that we did, retail businesses. I mean, even kind of fun educational businesses that are for children and for adults as well. Mm-hmm. So when I say it really runs the gamut, I mean, it really runs the gamut, right? So, and some people will say, well, how can you, I mean, you're not an expert at all of these, but a lot of these small businesses, people are asking the exact same questions about.
Yeah.
Show me what it is. How do I make money out of it? And how do I run this thing? And how involved, Maggie, before we started this, was like, well, how many hours do I have to be involved in that? So there's a lot of that as well as I guess I would only say, and I would just caution everybody, there's a lot of information on the internet, especially I see it on Instagram. It's like, buy a business for $0 and, get a capital thing going. And, you don't need any money at all to buy these businesses. So I'm slightly terrified of whatever that is that they're trying to promote.
Yeah.
But bottom line is you could work with us and we can kind of walk you through some opportunities. Somebody just called me on the way in here. Somebody just called me there's an attorney we work with. She's just on the front part of her journey to buy a business. She has a 401k. She wants to use some of those funds. There's different ways to use all that, but we can kind of get into that. So that's, as general as I can get about some of what we work with.
I thought it was so interesting when I jumped on your website, you joined Purse Strings and it has a listing of businesses that are for sale right now. So I was like, let's dive in. And there were arcades and med spas and all these different things. And so I wanted to run through just a couple of these numbers that you have on here just to understand it a bit better. So for this example, I'm going to use this upholstery business because how fun. And so it says for the listing details, the price is $245,000, and then the down payment is 10% of that. And so is that the money that people just need to put down to purchase the business?
So it's interesting with that particular thing. So sometimes it's just the escrow money that you're putting down, just like a house, a down payment, right? So I'd like to proceed with you. I'd like to see if we can work together. 10% would be the down payment. Now, there's another part of that you can do, which is it truly a down payment and then you're seller financing the rest of it? In this particular case, that is not happening with that business. But there are cases where you're providing a certain percentage down and it's never, unless it's truly distressed and this person just dying to get out. And sometimes, they just want to get out of the lease, or there's certain things that happen here where you're giving them maybe 50, 60, 80% down. And either the bank is telling them or the seller's telling them, you're saying it's such a great business, so I want you to sell. I want you to be partially the bank, and I want you to seller finance some of this as well. So that means that you may get a chunk of money up front if you're the seller, and then you're going to do some what we would call seller financing. Now you could still make points on that, just like a bank. You can make a percentage off of that over a certain period of time. If you do have a bank with an SBA lender, the bank may dictate that. They may say, listen, we want this seller to have some skin in the game. You know what I mean? That's tied in with it. And then most sellers are always just terrified of that. They're like, what if they crash and burn? And, I ran this effectively and then they're going to ruin it and all this stuff. So you don't know what you don't know. But I will say there are some tax advantages to that as well. So when people sell their business, they're going to get a pretty decent sized liquidity event, right? So I'm not a financial advisor. I don't claim to be one at all whatsoever. But I'm saying there are when you sell a business, you're paying your broker, you're paying me, the attorney, right, that helped you with that transaction, and then you're paying the government. So there's capital gains, just like a house or anything else that's tied with it. So sometimes that could be a very effective way to minimize some of your tax burden when you buy a business. So its down payment could be just the, hey, let's get started with the letter of intent. Or down payment could truly be, I'm paying you a certain amount, and then we're talking about the whole transaction with some seller financing that could be involved with it.
Okay, interesting. Because then the next line on there is the seller's discretionary earnings, which in this example is $66,000 a year, or $66,000. So does that mean that what does that mean?
Yeah, so that means that the owner take basically the cash flow from this. After they pay everybody, they pay. So in this case, you're kind of buying a job, right? So bottom line is you're making $60,000, but I would, and this is the example that I had, that Sometimes people scoff at that and say, well, like, oh, why would I buy that? It's only 60 grand. But bottom line is well, let's just talk about that number first. So that is you have your top line gross revenue. Then you pay all these people and all your expenses and your cost of goods and your all this other stuff and your taxes. And then that's what you're left. Now, small businesses are really interesting, right? Because a lot of people run a lot of stuff through their small businesses. So, they got the kids' school through it. They have their insurance. They got the telephone through it. Okay, there's no judging whatsoever. I mean, that's the advantages of being a small business to do that. But we would call some of those add backs. We add those back, meaning those aren't expenses that are required to run the business, but they are an owner benefit that can be tied into that final number there. So in this case, the people that own that business, they're older. They're probably already on Medicare. They don't need a lot of money. They're like, hey, listen, I have this business that's been around for a very long time. My father started it. We kind of ran it afterwards. We're living an okay life, right? We don't need a ton of money. But I would say sometimes why those businesses are great is, I'll just my example, when I bought my home care agency and then I bought another territory that had some caregivers, and they were like billing about $400,000, and they had 20 caregivers, or I can't remember if it was like 15 or 20 clients. And in that case, I was a very strategic buyer, right? I was kind of going, and I was already in that industry, but I was able to take that and really grow it. It was a great springboard for me to take that and kind of run with it. So just because that particular, that seller is not lighting the world on fire, it doesn't mean that they don't potentially have a really great base to work off of, right? So,
yeah.
So I know, Maggie, you're really good at like doing stuff with automation and making things happen. They might not even have a CRM right now that they're using, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, like we could systematize this thing in like 5 minutes, and maybe they're not doing a lot of advertising, or they're not doing it in a way to really reach out. Now, if you have the people power to really get that business to go, then it's just scaling, right? You're buying something to scale at that point. Or to be honest, maybe you're buying just a job. I don't know. I mean, maybe for somebody 60 grand's like, yeah, I need something to do, and that's a nice business, and I don't mind doing that business at all. So it really, that's where that net number could mean many different things to many different types of buyers that are out there.
I just thought it was so interesting, as, we talk about so much of like buying a home as a great investment. You have the down payment, and then maybe you rent it or you Airbnb it or something like that to kind of get that income, which is one way to kind of have passive income. And so it was interesting kind of looking at this, which would kind of equal the same amount of as a down payment. You kind of see how much money is already coming in, and you could really amplify that. And so it was just such a different investment opportunity. But of course, it is going to be hands-on more or less depending on the business. And so for this example, do you think you need to learn upholstery, or do you think you just tell people how to do it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. This is kind of a misnomer of passive income, right? Because everybody wants passive income. Like, I just buy that and then it spits off another $100,000 for me.
Yeah, don't we all?
Exactly. And if it was that easy,
we'd all do it.
Everybody would have their own 16 businesses on the side, right? Like, why not? In this business, it is what we would call an owner-operator business, right? As it stands today, right now. So there are people working that business, and they are owner operating it. They are putting in hours, whatever it is, 20, 30, 40 hours a week, 50 hours, 100 hours, whatever it is a week, to run that business. Whether they're doing the actual work or not, they probably have laborers that are doing the actual work, right? But they are actively engaged in that business on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. They are sitting at the store or retail front to have people come in and give them jobs, and talking to them and kind of like, yes, we can do that. Yes, this is how much it's going to cost. There's an element. So when people check in with me, and the first question I ask is this an investment, or do you really have time to run this business? Because this misnomer of, well, yeah, I was just trying to like, do it, and like, hopefully it's seller financed and all this other fun stuff, where there could be some real diamonds in the rough out there, but that's like the 1% of all the businesses that I would ever sell, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of these are you're getting in there, you're working it, you're whether you have that skill or not. That's what every business is involved. Now, I will say, as the businesses get bigger, obviously they have more management, they have more people there. They have more people to run those businesses. So if you can reach a little bit, you're probably buying a better business. But if you're just starting your journey, or maybe cash is not, you don't have a ton of cash, start with something small, but you have to be able to work it. When people say, I don't have time to work a business, I tell them, just buy a property or just put it into the stock market. Like, that's not this. This is actually like working in a business. So you need time to do that, or else you're going to crash and burn. The money's going to go down the toilet, at that point. So, anyway, that helps you in regards to, it's a really great question though, of how many hours does it take to run a particular business? Because it really varies. I mean, but also when somebody says, you got to be careful too, because when somebody says, hey, I'm only in here 5 or 10 hours a week or whatever it is. Well, yeah, but they've been running that business for 20 years.
Right.
So they have a breadth of knowledge that, like, you do things over a certain period of time. It's like, I can do that in my sleep at that point, right?
Right.
Manage that stuff. So you, as something new, if it's a new concept for you, your learning curve is going to be a lot longer. Maybe you'll get to that point, but you're certainly, it's going to be a little rough at the beginning.
Well, I appreciate that breakdown. You have all these, what some of these numbers mean. And so if people do go on your site and look at different businesses, I know this friend, like, if they could buy an arcade, that would be their dream, like running around with kids and playing all day, like perfect, but like that doesn't work for everyone.
Right.
So it's so interesting. And then when you look in your community, how you see that arcade and you see that upholstery business, you're like, now I wonder who owns that. I wonder how the business is, you have these different perspectives on these places right down the street. So it's super interesting. And I'm glad we have that breakdown now for the community.
And I want to jump in and ask, let's say someone is ready to hang it up and they have some value in their business and they're ready to sell. Tell us about that process and what the business owner should have in place if they're ready to sell a business. Because you said it took you 18 months. I was surprised by the length of that time.
Yeah, so it's a good question. Our typical engagement, if you're using a broker, is 1 year. So typical time to sell a business in the United States is about 8.5 months. Our office is doing a little better with about 7 months right now, but we've had some really great businesses that took 18 months or more. In one particular case, it was too big for the guy down the street or a girl down the street to buy it, but it was too small for the private equity to swoop down and buy it. So even though it was a really great business, I mean, the thing was spitting off $900,000 a year,
Wow.
and it was also, there was a technical aspect, because it was like, you needed to have some skills to be able to run this. It was a very specific skill to be able to run that business. So you just never know. When and if you're ready to sell, first of all, I always tell people you can't recreate history. Okay, so if you think you're going to sell, a lot of times we get a lot of people that are like, I can't do this for one more day. Like, get me out of it tomorrow. And okay, we can talk about that, and we'll work with you. But I love the people that come to me 2 years in advance, 1 year in advance, 3 years in advance, because they're asking very good questions about what should my business look like when it sells. And what we see a lot is a lot of people are really great at doing something, right? You run a bakery. You probably started that bakery because you're really good at baking, right? But then you found out all these other business things that are involved with, like, running a bakery. And you may or may not know your financials well. Do you have a profit and loss statement? Do you have a balance sheet? Do you know what that profit and loss statement looks like? Are you doing all these weird things to cut corners so you don't pay taxes every year? Okay, no judgment there again. But when there's a lot of explaining in your business to somebody, it makes it a little bit more challenging for the buyer to potentially buy into all these things that you did that need explaining, right?
Yeah.
Businesses that have clean books and are very easy to explain, those businesses always sell quicker, right? Because so I think getting with your accountant or whoever you're using, or please use an accountant, somebody that, if you're not a financial expert, get one in your business so you understand what's happening there in your business. So I'd say just the first part is, what does your business look like, right? What do your finances look like? What does your cash flow look like for your business, that you understand that before anybody else understands that? And we always tell people too, I always start with telling people, is there a key employee in the business that potentially would buy the business before you work with a broker? Maybe you don't need to work with me at all. Is there, if you're a franchisee, is there a franchisee in the neighborhood that maybe would acquire you, right? And sometimes they go, yeah, I've been talking to so-and-so, and, maybe that does make sense. Maybe you just need a really good attorney who does mergers and acquisitions that helps you with that transaction because you've identified a buyer, right? Or maybe you need a broker that's bringing buyers to the table, or a broker that's going to help you kind of land the plane. So the analogy I always say is if you're deep sea fishing, it's one thing to kind of go out, but like putting all the stuff on the hook, putting it down there, and now you have a big fish on the hook. Now, does everybody know how to reel it in,
Right.
get it on the boat, cut it up to make sure you can eat it, and kind of go from there, from the ocean all the way to like eating this? I not me. I mean, I probably pull it out and maybe cook it. I don't know in that regard. But, so I would just say that's where you really are engaging somebody. And there's a lot of hesitation sometimes with small business owners because they're like, well, I don't want to pay the commission, and I don't want to do this and that. But I've seen people, and I almost encourage them, please try to go sell your business yourself, because there's a confidentiality part of this as well, where I'm going off on all these tangents, but I'll get back to the point you asked about. You list your business like you list a house.
Yeah.
You have a listing agreement that's tied with it. We gather all your information, right? So from financials to the story of your business with the little seller questionnaire we have. We create an executive summary that talks about the story of your business. You as the business owner will bless that document. Yes, that represents my business. Then we hit the market. We use 7 sites on a regular basis that bring in buyers, but we also, with 30, 40 listings, we have a very large pool of strategic buyers that we can show your business to in a lot of different categories. I'll tie in with that. And also, that is a confidential process where you're not naming the name of the business. You're just saying, like you're saying, upholstery company, Western suburbs, 40 years of history, whatever it is, that's tied in with that. They will sign a non-disclosure agreement. The buyers will. We'll call every single one of them just to make sure you're not in Winnetka and there's something in Joliet and you want to travel down there, or whatever it is that ties in with it. Geography is important. Knowing if it's an investment or not, if you're going to have time to run the business. I want to disqualify people quickly.
Right.
But also sometimes they go, I've been looking for this. And you're like, oh my gosh, we got one of those. Like, no problem. I can show you this other listing. I mean, that's the important part of speaking to buyers, right? So they sign this NDA, this non-disclosure agreement, and then now you're giving them, you're saying, I'm about to give you some very sensitive information. I'm giving you the information on this business. And then from there, you probably have a million questions. And then you do a showing just like a house.
Yeah.
So like it's like this, we're having a conversation. Can you tell me about this? Can you tell me about this? Hopefully you're getting to that letter of intent, and if it's a smaller business, you're going right to contract on it. And even at that part, you're not married yet. You're just kind of dating to see, like, does this make sense or not, like, for us to work together? And you're in the due diligence phase, right? Now I want to see the tax returns. Now I want to see the client list. And maybe not divulging the actual clients, but client A, B, C, D. Like, is there one client that makes up 90% of your revenue? Well, that could be an issue, because if that client goes away, you don't have much of a business after that, right? So that's where we get into due diligence. Hopefully through that process, with a good broker and 2 attorneys, one on the buyer side, one on the seller side, you will get to a closing date. You'll get your wire transfer or your check or whatever it is. You have your transition worked out, and then you walk into the sunset after that. That's tied in with it. That's the quickest way I could ever explain it. But that part before we even talk to a broker, look at your stuff now. And if you need, we send people to business advisors all the time that are, it's like, hey, listen, I want to get this because I'm due this and I need this for my retirement. Okay, nobody cares. That's you. That's
your issue.
And if your business is worth that, double thumbs up. That's great. But if you need to work a little harder in your business, we'll give you to somebody that'll get you to the promised land with the value, that'll do exit planning for you. But I just get a lot of people that are just very frustrated. They're burnt out. They're tired, and it's like, get me out of here tomorrow. Although one thing that I think is always hilarious is they say that, and then the first minute they get an offer, they're like, that's not enough. I can't take that. It's like, wait a minute. You said 5 minutes ago that you wanted to get out of this. Like, there's a check waiting for you here. And now all of a sudden we're going to have this moment of like what it's worth, So anyway, it's a lot. It's very emotional for a lot of people.
Oh,
but
yeah.
The blood, sweat, and I mean, think about it. It's like you buy your house, you get married, you sell your business. I mean, those are really big things in life that, unless you're a serial entrepreneur that does this every day, most people are only doing this once or twice
in
their whole life.
Right. And they're selling, I mean, I think it's a lot more emotional than selling a house, because you put your blood, sweat, and tears into that. It meant something to you, you know? And yeah, it is funny, like you said on the internet, oh, buy for $0. You just sit back with your feet up and get all sorts of money coming in. And, you know, it's true. I mean, if you own your own business, you know it, Matt, I know it, Maggie knows it. It's, you know, working 80 hours for yourself. But if it's something you love, it's your mission, it's your calling, you'd much rather do that than work 40 hours to help somebody else make money, right?
100%. 100% actually. And I have no doubt there's a couple really great e-commerce businesses or something that are less hands-on,
Yeah.
where there's some small percentage of people that probably doesn't have to work that hard in some of those businesses, but it's really, really small percentage. And then it's just kind of selling the stream to everybody else to do that.
Purse Strings offers an available for hire network of vetted professionals who specialize in serving women. When you have a life event that has suddenly made money a priority, you can now move forward with a whole new confidence that you're getting advice and services from savvy professionals who are uniquely equipped to serve your needs. Go to pursestrings.co and use our directory of handpicked financial professionals when you're ready to plan for retirement, navigate divorce, buy your next home, fire up your new business, and more. Go to pursestrings.co or check the link in the show notes. Now you can be financially fearless.
Well, I do have one more question that's really important, and it's around funding. So let's say somebody comes in, let's say a mom comes in, you know, she's a stay-at-home mom. Her kids are going to start going to school. She's going to have some free time. She'd like to own her own business. I'm just setting up a scenario. She sees something out there, cleaners, whatever it might be. And she's like, you know, I always wanted to own my own business. This is something I'd be interested in doing. How does someone like that, who has a mortgage, you know, has some kids in school, and they want to own their own business, how do they get funding for that?
Yeah, so the SBA, the Small Business Administration, is still a wonderful vehicle for people to not have to put a lot of capital in. So there's a bajillion banks that will be happy to talk to you if you have a decent credit score to get into that. We work with some specific referral lists that we know are good banks that will get the deal done, because the three things that can blow up a deal is lawyers, lenders, and landlords. I mean, the three L's that happen all the time. So if you're talking about the lenders specifically, so I think getting pre-qualified, going to a bank and saying, I'd like to buy a business, here's what my financials look like, and typically you only need 10% down to buy a business with an SBA loan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, rates are kind of bonkers right now, but it's still a means to an end to get into that business. And I think knowing that in advance and being a very good buyer to like come to them and say, I know what I'm doing. This is the bank I'm using. I'm pre-qualified. Just like a house as well. The people that say like, I don't want a contingency. I don't want a contingency to this thing. I want to know you're ready to go.
Yeah.
So I think that's very helpful. Or proof of funds, right? Okay, yeah, I put away some money, and I have this money that, you know, I can show you that you don't have to show their account or anything, but like, you know, hey, I do have fun. I can show you proof of funds that I have those funds. And then there are some interesting things too. There's, there's like Rob's loans out there, where basically means you're using your 401k to create another 401k that owns the business. So you're avoiding that pre-penalty up front to take all your money out of a 401k.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, you're not dependent on what the bank says in underwriting, because that process can be with the SBA.
So you're getting a loan against your 401k is what you're saying?
Correct. You're basically loaning yourself your own money to create a 401k.
So there's lots of different scenarios. If you got an SBA loan, it's prime plus 2% or something usually. Prime right now is so you're looking at 10 or 11% on the loan if you were to do this today.
With the standard. Now, there are some banks, traditional banks, that are just doing prime.
Okay.
I mean, they're just doing prime right now. Now, those are probably more traditional banks that are going to hold the loan, but they're a little. I am finding that those banks can be a little bit more conservative, right? Like they're not going to lend on everything, and their underwriting process is going to be maybe a little bit more intense if they're going to do that. But yeah, there's a lot of lenders, prime plus 1, prime plus 2. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay. So essentially, this all comes down to really, it's like buying a house, an investment that way. But it's got its own unique ups and downs, ins and outs, whatever strategies. There's probably a million ways you can go about it. That's why you need Matt, right?
We can certainly help.
That's why I just love this conversation, as we hear so much about investing, especially real estate investing, and that's not always everyone's cup of tea. And so it's just awesome to bring these other opportunities that are very similar but still different, and can, just take your investments in a different direction. And so real estate's not always, the one option, but you can make your own business, but you can then purchase your own business, which is so empowering as well. So I was just so excited to learn about this and share this with the community.
So Matt is one of our Purse Strings approved professionals. You can find him at pursestrings.co. We also, like Matt said, it's really important for small businesses to understand their numbers. And I get that part because, you're so in tune to your bakery or your nails or your salon or your cleaners, whatever it is you love to do. You're not about the financials. That's not what you went into business to do, your financials at the same time. So you really need experts in that area. We also have CPAs and bookkeepers and accountants at Purse Strings as well, if you're in a business and you need that kind of help. But Matt, how else can women find out about you if they're curious about talking to you about perhaps starting a business or selling a business?
Sure. The easiest way is just our website, which is tworld.com. I think it's /LaGrange. So we're specifically the LaGrange office. There are many, many Transworld offices across the country. We are out of LaGrange. We have, like I said, 8 people in our office. tworld.com /LaGrange. You can see a lot of stuff there. And then you can browse through our listings. You can, our phone number's right up on there as well. That's usually the easiest. Or if you can remember LaGrange at tworld.com. So LaGrange at T as in Tom, world.com. That comes to me directly as well.
Awesome. We'll make sure those links, of course, are in the show notes as well. But we thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise today with our communities of women. Everyone who's listening, make sure to like and subscribe so you're notified when we have a new episode. And we'd love a 5-star review. But if you're thinking about, buying or selling a business, definitely give Matt a call. Open these conversations. The sooner the better. And be financially fearless.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.